We're ready. Got it. All right. I guess I'll start off by introducing myself. My name is Irving Montgomery. I am KDR's Director of Character Development. In a nutshell, that is all of our educational programs. I've been here for a few years now. But I just wanted to thank everyone for coming out tonight to the first Kimball talk of the school year. We started these, I think, 2 years ago now during COVID. And it was built around the idea of alumni being able to come, share their KDR experience and how that experience helped them in their professional career. So upcoming this semester, we have Derek Hudson from the Chi Beta chapter coming next month to speak on his experience running a nonprofit in Charleston, West Virginia. And then after that, we have Evan Flatt from the Beta Gamma chapter at Christopher Newport. He is on the social media team with NASA, and he will be speaking in September. But I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Scott Bradley to introduce our speaker for tonight.
All right, perfect. I don't know what you did, but I couldn't unmute myself. So, all right, gentlemen. So, like Irving said, I'm our current national president. I've talked to most of you at some point in time, I believe. If not, I'm glad that you're here, and I appreciate the time that you're giving us today. So in an effort to be quick and not take up too much of everyone's evening, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Xavier Romano. Xavier is our new executive director for Kappa Delta Rho. Although he is not a KDR, he does have some great experience in the fraternity and the collegiate world. He is a graduate of the University of Oregon, got his master's degree from Santa Clara University. During his career working for in education for colleges, he worked in student leadership, student services, director of multicultural affairs, dean of students, and VP of student services. So it's a good advantage there because he has a lot of knowledge and contacts on the university side. Most recently, he was actually the executive director of Sigma Lambda Beta, which he is also not a member of. So he has experience running an organization that he is not a member of. Some things that he started June 1st and hit the ground running. Developing relationships with the office staff first to learn their strengths and work to help get them in the right positions, put some new processes in the national office. His main focus is building relationships with consuls and the members, and he's focused on serving Kappa Delta Rho. He wants the headquarters to be a part of the overall KDR experience and not just the pain in the butt. And this is my words, not just a pain in the butt that calls when they want something. So we want to do more than just that. We want to be in your everyday lives and helping alumni and undergraduates both get where they want to go. So without further ado, I will introduce Mr. Xavier Romano.
Thank you, Scott. And thank you all for the kind and generous welcome to KDR that I've exhibited and been experiencing over the course of the last 5 weeks. This has been an extraordinary transition for me as I'm a lifelong educator of 30 plus years, most of those years serving at the cabinet level as a vice president and dean, but also have had my opportunity to really study the landscape of higher education through my Fulbright in Germany, and also courtesy of the British Council in England. My portfolio is rather unique and distinctive insofar that I had my first vice presidency at the age of 27. Yeah, age of 27. 30 years in public and private higher education. It has been an absolute joy, a passion of mine. I've had the privilege of working with all the great attributes that come in leadership in working in colleges and universities, public and private around the country. But I've also had the experience of having to deal with some rather difficult issues: homicide, suicide, sexual assault. There's very little in my portfolio that I have not experienced. As Scott may remember, during the interview process with KDR, we had tragically a suicide at Sigma Lambda Beta. I had already stepped aside as the executive director, but I was the one that they were calling and the parents were calling in terms of trying to keep them together. Scott was very gracious insofar that he saw the stress on my face. And yet another example of the realities of our world. Why KDR for me? This was not an accidental move, gentlemen. I was looking for an environment where I could make a difference, where I could take this commitment of service and apply it at this time in my life, at this time in my career, to make a difference in an organization. Kappa Delta Rho became particularly interesting to me because, as you may know, I'm a Chi Psi. And Chi Psi, founded in 1841, is like KDR, one of the classical fraternities that is all about character development and the attributes of becoming a gentleman of repute to serve society and to be a leader in society. Thus, when I first heard Credo, it was not only familiar to me, but there was an emotion of feeling and almost an environment that was not foreign and very special. We have certain similarities in our cultures that I don't think is by accident, since we're both products of the Northeast fraternal movement. You at Middlebury, ourselves at Union. We are both secret societies, and as such, I assure you that one place of concern is a place of ritual. You simply have my word, gentlemen, that I just don't go near anything related to secrecy and ritual, because I would not want that same to my fraternity. So I step cautiously. I ask an awful lot of questions about where I can and cannot go, and ultimately respect those lines, but also believe in those lines of ritual confidentiality. So that being said, I believe that we are now living through and experiencing a transformative time in higher education, particularly as related to Greek life. I cannot thank the student members of KDR enough, who I'm on the phone with daily, many times a day. And your introduction to the organization, to the fraternity, to what you need has been remarkable, but candid, honest, and frankly, eye-opening. I recognize that we have an extraordinary talent pool within headquarters, and yet we also have to be doing our job differently as we move forward. We have, for all kinds of reasons, lost the confidence of our undergraduate community. I assure you, gentlemen, that I hear you loud and well. For those of you that have already been interacting with me, you understand that this is a new day. It's a new mode of operation. We're engaging fundamentally differently, as we should. I believe that headquarters should be as important to our collegiate membership as the Dean of Students office. We need to be that intellectual and fraternal resource for you on that academic adventure that's college. We see this already starting to manifest itself insofar that there are a handful of our chapters that are going through some judicial processes. And it is extraordinary to have these men already inviting me to be a part of the process and helping them maneuver the undergraduate jungle. One of the things that we plan on doing as we move forward is simply to be relevant in your lives. The undergraduates will hear me continuously asking for feedback. You will see transparent operations coming out of headquarters. Everything is fair game. And we recognize only too well that you're not interested in rhetoric. You're interested in action. I understand that. This paradigm shift has already started within operations here. We are now talking daily about how do we actively engage as an intellectual and collegiate resource for our membership. That is a different mindset. It's a different perspective. It is one of HQ being a partner in your learning, educational, and fraternal enterprise. It is to be relevant in your lives, but it is something that we recognize isn't going to happen overnight. It's going to take time, but I do believe that it happens one conversation by one conversation. Now, let's recognize something that I will share with you. The landscape of Greek life in American higher education is at a new point. We are, as I mentioned earlier, at a time of transition and transformation. Greek life is again under scrutiny. There are a number of major cases, indeed lawsuits having to do with hazing, that are being very carefully watched nationally. You know of them at the University of Missouri, University of Iowa, University of Wyoming. I could go on. There are a number. We do ourselves no favor as we don't contribute and create challenges for university administrators and university environments. One of the great changes that's happened on college campuses is that colleges have moved from what I would define as holistic student development to one that is risk averse, that is concerned first and foremost about liability, about risk management issues, and are actively asking the question, what is the role of Greek life on campus? Does it have a future? I'm here to share with you that I believe through organizations like KDR, we not only have a future, but we have a robust future. But it cannot be operations as usual. We have to begin to think and ask the question, what do we, KDR, bring to college and university campuses, not just where we exist today, but gentlemen, we must expand. We must start to grow again, not just chapter sizes, but we need to expand ourselves on other colleges and universities nationally. Those conversations have already started in earnest. I'm thrilled to say that as Scott and the board are already active partners in these conversations. People are curious about us, but we must be able to ask the question, answer the question, what is the value added that Kappa Delta Rho brings to a collegiate community? This is not a trick question, gentlemen. It's a question of the heart. We must be able to answer that question on point, and we can. It is distinctive to each chapter and community. There is no one template answer, but there is an answer that binds us all. We have to begin to think, not only how do we serve ourselves internally, the brotherhood is extraordinary. You've proven that since 1905. But how is it we contribute to the lives of other students on campus external to KDR? External to KDR. It's not good enough to just be an outstanding fraternity, have great bonds, and function well. The question is, what do we take and bring to every university campus? We collectively need to answer that question. I'm being asked that question every single day as I talk to cabinet level administrators from across the country. Important that you know this, because these are the questions that they're asking. You also know that we now live in a world that has a zero tolerance as it relates to sexual misconduct, sexual assault. We know this is fact. We know this is fact. Let's move on. I will also submit to you that we have a society, as you know, takes only one peek at the national news every day to look at the environment and go, you know, we're a society in challenge that has problems. I tend to be one of those people that believe that societal answers, the leadership that our society needs, comes from you, the membership of KDR and traditional organizations like KDR. We're hurting, and it makes no sense to me that we keep our talent base internal. The question for me is not just that undergraduate experience with Kappa Delta Rho, but the steps that will follow as you go on to graduate school and as you start to engage your communities. What kind of difference will KDR men make into the future in our society? Because this society needs you now more than ever. One of the jobs that I believe that I have is to build that trust, to build that credibility again, to work in partnership with you, and to be that service provider that is learning daily from all of you in terms of your needs, your aspirations, but more importantly, we've got to start asking ourselves the question, where are we going and how are we going to get there? To you, the collegiate membership, this is a huge question for you because you have to be a part of the answer. I will be seeking that direction from you. Yes, we're also going to be asking the alumni, but you collegiates are at a special place in time in a society that is in need of your leadership. I believe that passionately. So at the end of the day, I'm here because I believe that I can make a difference in the lives of men and in the life of KDR. I recognize, gentlemen, that this is not an easy lift. It's in fact a very heavy lift, but I'm good with that. I've been around the block, I'm experienced, and I think that unique toolkit that I have will serve us well in the years to come. Somebody said to me not too long ago, wonderful individual who was educating me about the fraternity. It's like, Javier, how long are you planning on being with KDR? Are you planning on using that as a stepping stone to something? No, gentlemen, this is it for me. Yeah, there was a point in time 10 years ago or so when I was thinking about being a liberal arts college president. You know, the environment of higher education changed, it shifted. It became one, as I mentioned earlier, not of holistic education, but of risk management. Yeah, I wasn't into that. And I think that is the wrong direction for the academy. But that being said, the academy still has a role and a place, as do we in its environment. But it has to be different. And we too must evolve. The question is to what? To where? Conversations to be had should be exciting and engaging. And we should also learn to challenge each other thoughtfully and respectfully. I welcome those engagements, those conversations, and indeed even those hard conversations that are yet to come. Finally, I will say to you the following. This decision of mine to join your community was heartfelt. I thought carefully in terms of the skill sets that I have, my experience base, and could I truly be of service to KDR? So it was not a decision made lightly. And yet I believe it is the best decision that I've ever made. In closing, and before we start a conversation and taking your questions, I'd like to share with you something that will guide me, direct me. Received a note today from Paul Downs, Gamma 68. A note like this, gentlemen, it's a once in a lifetime kind of note. I've never seen anything like this. I'll never see anything like it again, I am sure. I want to share 2 paragraphs of it with you because it's important for you to know that when I wake up each morning, this note will be in front of me and will drive me and will remind me of not only the stories yet to come, but also the values that undergird and are so important to KDR. So allow me to be so kind. From the impressive resume I received and reviewed carefully, you appear to have an extensive toolbox of innate and incisive abilities aligned with critical mental resources and stamina to articulate and then integrate all members of our brotherhood with the fullest measure of Albert Einstein's sage advice. Try not to become a person of success, but rather try to become a person of value. Above all, as our executive director, you have been entrusted with a challenging yet noble responsibility: stewardship of the time-honored principles of honesty and integrity, indispensable keystones of character, championed by Kappa Delta Rho's founding fathers in 1905. It doesn't get any more important than that to me in my career, gentlemen. I will stop now and let's start the conversation. Thank you, gentlemen.
Excuse me. So, gentlemen, what I would like to do, and Irving's going to be in charge of this as much as I am, because he's got charge of who's on mute and who's not. Excuse me. If you have a question, please put it in the chat. I do ask, and like Javier said, we're not afraid to answer the tough questions, but I do expect respectable questions from the situations of change and transformation that we're going through. Please ask for that respect. And if there may be a question we can't answer, and if there is, we'll be honest with you that there's some things we just can't answer at this point in time. So the first one is from Bob Saltzman. It says, from your experience working with fraternities and sororities, what is the national reputation of Kappa Delta Rho?
Wonderful question. It has a complex answer if I'm to be truthful, and I shall be. Kappa Delta Rho, known as one of the classical historical fraternities, has a very important place in the history of Greek life. There is, however, a sense that predates the pandemic. This is not a post-pandemic phenomenon that KDR was on a decline. I don't know why. I don't know the answer to that. I'm on the hunt, but there is a sense in talking to other Greek leadership from around the country and of similar organizations that we were on a slide. And if you look at our membership numbers, if you look at our number of active chapters, those metrics tell a tale. But we need to somehow get deeper into the data and begin to ask the question of why, and environmentally, what transpired on those campuses. But more importantly, how we regroup, how we regain our footing. I do believe, as I shared with the board, that our best days are yet to come, but we need to mobilize as a community to engage. And that engagement is going to need to be coordinated, thoughtful, appropriate, and again, at the end of the day, articulating what is the value added that we bring to every university community where we exist. So I believe our future is strong, Bob, but I think most professionals believe that we've been on a slide for a period of time, like so many other fraternities. We're certainly not alone in that environment. And the pandemic simply, frankly, put into overdrive all the issues that previously existed. No doubt, no fraternity and sororities came out of the pandemic well. Sororities came out of it a little bit better because of their ability to operate virtually. But fraternities, very difficult time. What's interesting, though, when you look at the data, is that our slide started prior to the pandemic, and all the pandemic did was throw kerosene on the fire.
Excellent. Okay. So Kyle Spiller asks, based on that question, how do you see future growth? This semester, I know we were adding Clemson, but beyond that, how do you see future expansion to turn the slide you mentioned around? That's
Great question.
A great question. We've been working on
Great question. It's a question, by the way, we're engaging daily. In Clemson, we will be successful in our expansion, but we're already starting conversations regarding our return to Lambda at UC Berkeley. They're an interesting case study because years ago, they were very successful in their return with an intake of roughly 40 men. And yet 4 years later, they were on the slide. And so we're looking at that scenario in terms of not just recruitment, but sustainability. How do we sustain the membership once you get beyond that initial push of friends that are that intake class? And so Berkeley is a really good example of how we're going to re-engage differently, building on the success of the past. Clearly the men knew how to recruit, but they did not know how to sustain. And so we're looking at that equation differently. We are now soon starting conversations regarding a return to Lafayette. Same question, what can we do? How do we do it differently? Yes, we will soon be starting a conversation this term in terms of our return to Penn State. It is time. And yet we have to ask the question, what does our future look like? How have we evolved? And how do we become a value added to that Penn State community? There's going to be a lot of people who aren't happy about our potential return to Penn State, and they're going to be vocal about it. They will have questions, we will have answers. So we're also looking at different environments. Where can we succeed? Are there other institutions where we existed historically where we can return? And that conversation is already afoot. I'm already in a number of conversations nationally with campus leadership at the cabinet level regarding the possibility of a KDR return. We're also looking at the larger environment that is looking at Greek expansion, but therein lies the importance of fit. KDR ought not be every place. We have to be thoughtful and study the data, look at the trend data from the institutions, look at how they're supporting Greek life. We can't do it by ourselves. We need to have administrations that are supportive of our movement. But when aligned, there's opportunity for growth. So those conversations have started. They're going to be tough. We will have great answers, but we also have to ask the question, where are we going and how do we get there? Because that's going to be a part of the question coming from the universities. What does KDR bring to us in the here and now and tomorrow? We will be able to answer those questions and answer them well.
Excellent. And Ken Coulter asks a very good complementary question to that. How do you think about, whoa, hang on, Sean. Sean asked a really long question we're going to get to. It moved my whole screen up. So Ken asks, how do you think about the important balance of expansion versus improving current chapters or reopening closed chapters? So you talked about reopening some of the closed chapters. So let's talk about expansion versus growing current chapters.
Well, brilliant question. And the fact of the matter is we're going to need to be doing both simultaneously. But growth and support of our current chapters also means that we have to be in a position where the brotherhood and the undergraduates believe in headquarters once again. Being candid, that trust is gone right now. We're rebuilding it conversation by conversation, chapter leadership chat by chapter leadership chat. But once the men begin to understand that we're not there to dictate, we're there to be a complement to their academic journey. Part of that academic journey is helping the men understand how best to recruit, how to think differently in terms of their campus environment, using those tools that are available on campus that they may not be aware of in terms of additional funding opportunities for programmatic pieces. But again, having a level of conversation that is earnest and that is based in trust. Part of that falls on my shoulders. I have to earn it. Being brutally honest, I have to earn it from the membership. I believe that those conversations not only have started in earnest, but we're into it heavy already, if my schedule tells me anything. But you're right, we've got to do both pieces simultaneously. We're too fragile with our numbers not to do so. I wish we had the strength or the endowment that would allow us to solely focus on expansion or solely focus on chapter development. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I think we have to do it all at one time, but do it methodically, thoughtfully, but also, gentlemen, transparently. And you will know what we're up to. That's a big part of this equation. No surprises. You'll know what's working. You'll know what's not. We're going to need help in various regions. We will turn to you for that support. So it is, we got to walk and chew gum simultaneously. Are we up for it? I believe so. I will be candid with you, our staffing is rather thin relative to other fraternities. That's just the reality of it. I am truly blessed to have inherited an exceptional staff across the board, truly an exceptional staff. But other fraternities are double our size in terms of staffing. So we've got to be smarter, more thoughtful. We have to deploy appropriately. And this is not an ED who can sit behind a desk and, dictate. As Scott already knows, I'm already on the ground and will be engaging campuses and indeed our chapters, which they've been asking for. Are you going to show up? Are you going to talk to us? Are you going to have a presence with us? Yes, yes, and yes. Yes. HQ must function differently, and that is a part of this new paradigm. So great question. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. So Sean's question. KDR, like all Greek letter organizations, is a value-driven membership organization whose core values are encapsulated by our open motto, honor super omnia. Get out of the way, words. Honor before all things. Understanding that you are coming into this position from outside of our brotherhood, what does placing honor before all things mean to you, and how will this statement guide your stewardship of our fraternity?
Great question. And I think part of that answer is embedded in my fraternal tradition that has a great many similarities to yours, which is also honor-based, values-based. We have many similarities between us, almost scary so, yet not so much when you think about the fact that we both came out of our time. You're very much a product of 1905, as I'm a product of 1846. So there is a empathy and understanding and a respect for the culture, and also an intellectual understanding in terms of what KDR has historically stood for, your values, because they are not foreign to me in any way, shape, or form. I will also be reminded of them daily, as I shared with you in terms of the card that I received. As I said, you get one of those cards once in a lifetime. I am aware of its significance. I'm also aware of the charge, and it is a charge that I hope to live up to daily and earn from all of you each and every day by my actions, not by my words alone.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. From Zach Coleman, aside from expansion and growth, what are other other positive changes? What other positive changes do you feel should be considered in KDR? I can't talk anymore.
I think all of us being able to answer the question in terms of what is it that we bring to every collegiate community, and to be able to not only articulate that among ourselves, but to articulate that to the non-members, to the university administrations. There is going to be a zeal and an interest in that that I think defies words. People want to know what makes us distinctive and different. And as somebody just mentioned, we are in fact values-based and values-driven. We're still about character formation at a time where our society is desiring character formation. I do believe that we can't just talk to ourselves, but we also have to champion our message to an external audience. And it's an external audience that wants to hear this, wants to respect it, and also wants to see us live up to it. I believe that this kind of messaging as well is going to have some tangible implications as it relates to the recruitment piece, because I think men are looking for an organization like KDR. They just don't know it. We need to put it in front of them so that they can see all of the virtues that come out of this organization, and they are considerable.
Excellent. And I will also add that that is something that the board of directors are heavily involved in as well. The foundation is involved in helping raise money for our Brothers Keeper initiative and the things in the direction we're going there. I think that's something that is a great positive change that we can use on every campus, whether we're on, you know, how big we are on that campus or not. So, Ethan, I cannot pronounce your last name, but I'm just going to read your question. The question is, how do you motivate your team who is newly working alongside you? I laugh because this is a good one for you. Do you have any tips for the leaders of individual KDR chapters on how to motivate members in individual chapters and lead them to success? That's a great part of the question right there.
Yours is a phenomenal question, actually. I will also say that the first few times I said this, I think Scott kind of looked at me, kind of not sure what I meant. From day one, I've said to the board and I said to the team, you have to believe. You have to believe in KDR, not the current KDR solely, but all that KDR can be. It can't just be me who believes in all the potential. And I'm looking around at the team from Irving to Donna to Barb to Sherry to John to Abe, and they're changing, they're evolving, dare I say, becoming stronger young professionals operating in a fundamentally different paradigm. But you can't fake it. You can't fake it. Why? Because the undergraduates will see right through it, and as they should. That's why having to believe in our future is so important. And it falls on me to make that argument compelling. Because when you believe, and you believe in KDR's potential as undergraduates, the power that brings to your conversations, the group potential that brings to your behavior, activities, function, intramurals, it's remarkable. But you got to believe. And you're looking at somebody who believes in all that we can do. You got to walk the walk. You got to walk the walk.
From all aspects. That's from the board aspect as well.
Yeah.
Andrew Heller asks, what are some goals you envision for Capital Del Toro in both the shorter term, under 5 years, and the longer term, perhaps 10 to 20? And how do you intend to accomplish these goals?
Some immediate goals on the short term, great question, are the stabilization of our membership numbers and the growth of our membership numbers by chapter, but also starting to grow the fraternity back to its historical prominence. That is on the short term. We need to stop losing chapters. We need to stabilize, and then we have to grow thoughtfully and wisely. By the way, just because a campus invites us to go doesn't mean we should go. We've got to have a real critical look at the fit of the institution and the fit of KDR. And we're doing that already, looking at institutional metrics, percent of Greek membership. Is that trend going up or down? What kind of support has the university been providing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Longer term, we must build our endowment, gentlemen. We must build our endowment. We have, one of the challenges is that those fraternities who are smaller, but in a bit of a stronger position in terms of staffing, comes down to endowment size. What kind of numbers are we talking about? $10 to $15 million endowments are now seen as important benchmarks for the smaller traditional collegiate fraternities, 10 to 15. Larger fraternities, yeah, they're just in the stratosphere. They're 100 million more. Does money make the difference? Not always, but in this case, what dollars will do is provide more services to our collegiate members, which is why our foundation is so very important. They're incredibly successful to date, but we need to ramp up in all aspects, and they need also more tools in order to support the collegiate membership. We're back to believing. And this is the interesting piece. Scott and I were talking the other day. I've had the privilege of starting to talk to a lot of alumni. And there is crises of belief in the national organization as well. I thought it was initially only undergraduates. It's not. And so we need to figure out whence that came, what touch points happened historically that led to such a divide, a lack of support, and this sense of it's nationals. All they want is money. Well, we want more than that too. Yes, we need dollars, but we also need engagement. We need networking. We need you to open up those wonderful job opportunities for our collegiate members, which you already do, but we need to enhance. In other words, there's a role for all of us in this enterprise. But if we're thinking about hard and fast metrics, be nice to be around 10 million in endowment, moving towards 15. And that you'll see with the smaller fraternities, those with 50 chapters or less, the real operational difference is only in the size of the endowment, which then manifests itself in the size of the staffing. And that staffing piece then manifests itself in our ability to support our collegiate members. But we are starting already in this new paradigm of service to our collegiate membership. That simply has to be our priority at this juncture. The men deserve it, they haven't had it, and they need it now.
Very good. Scroll up. Roth asks, what do you wish to keep in the UCB and what to change? Being a member and having direct contact with nationals has been helpful to connect with them. And I think this board could be utilized more. So for those of you that don't know, I'll kind of step in for a second. The UCB is our undergraduate consulting board. Many, many, many years ago, we used to have a number of undergraduates on the board of directors. It became a risk management issue and we had to remove them from the board of directors. We developed this UCB to have contact from the board level to the undergraduate level. And really, the biggest thing that we utilize is when we're thinking of something as from a board, hey, here's our plan, we send it to them and have them look at. Been a different year with transition and interviewing and everything. And so some of those gentlemen were involved in our interview process. So that's where Roth was involved and he was a great help. I want that group to be more involved, but we have to figure out how to get them more involved from our end as well. So any input I'm willing to, to take and utilize and how we can grow that process. It's a board of 7. Roth, tell me if I'm wrong. There's only 5 on it at the moment. So we still need to fill 2 places. Am I correct? Yes. I saw your thumbs up. So that's something that Javier and I have not made it to completely in our discussions. So I'll answer that question for him. And I hope that helps answer, take care of that for you, Roth.
I also have an answer.
Please. Yes, sir.
Okay, Roth, I'm going to steal from my email of earlier. It was either late last night or early today. Roth and I are already in conversation regarding UCB. And Roth and his colleagues are already having some really great thoughts and ideas in terms of what UCB can do. In my response to Roth today, though, was how do we, from the headquarter perspective, support you in UCB? What do you want to see from us? What kind of engagement and involvement do you want to have from us? I don't want to assume anything, but I understand and am feeling from Roth that he's looking for an active partner, which he knows he has in me. And those questions he's already posing, and we've started a conversation, and that conversation is only going to become more fruitful. Like Scott, I believe that UCB can actually play an incredibly important role within KDR, but they have to also develop and figure out what it is that they want to do, how they want to do it. And then we, in turn, support the student initiative and refine the concepts. It's a partnership. And I feel very comfortable in saying that those conversations have already started, certainly with Roth and myself, but they're going to be expanding out as well.
Excellent. I'm glad y'all are talking already. That's good. From Irving.
What?
Irving has a question, but it's a good one. So, how do you plan to re-engage our alumni? Yes, financial donations are great, but we need time and presence donations just as much.
It's actually a great question, Irving, and I think this is where we can start to talk to alumni networks, talk to our chapters in terms of who are the alumni around those chapter locations, and start to both talk, engage, invite, but also have very candid conversations in terms of why now? Why now? And why not yesterday? I think we can have cogent and thoughtful conversations. But the fact of the matter is, as you've heard me say, it's going to take us all. It's not just going to be HQ. It can't just be the board. It is going to take the membership as a whole. And that is going to be a very important conversation. I think those conversations have started. As I look at my calendar, I'm starting to see more and more alums, probably a fourth of the appointments I'm looking at this month are now alumni. And I just relish the opportunity for those conversations. But you're right, we also have to have the conversations and understand and listen carefully to where the alumni are at, sort out where are the gaps, and be able to address those conversations in a way that is inviting, engaging, and yes, man, do we ever need the alumni engaged in this enterprise at this juncture. But it's not, it's going to also be the board. It's going to be the foundation board. I mean, it's all of us.
And I will second that. We need alumni involved.
Mhm.
I have to put a little caveat to it. We need the right alumni involved with every chapter.
Sure.
Because the wrong
True.
alumni can send you in the wrong path. So we need the right
True.
alumni involved with every chapter. And you don't have to be an alumni of that chapter to help that chapter.
That's right.
You know, a great example is if you went to school at Robert Morris, but you're somewhere down around Virginia Tech or Radford or one of those schools, you know, reach out to them, reach out to us. We'll get you in contact with consuls and people that can, you know, make the right conversations happen.
Agreed. Maybe the most important thing at times we can be is that network, that conduit, putting people together. And that's a role that is actually pretty important that we ought not overlook.
Yes. What else, gentlemen? Oh, here we go. Eric asks, what methods of communication do you feel should be used with chapters and alumni moving forward? Example, Yammer versus email. Somebody's going to have to explain Yammer to me. Websites versus newsletters. Presently, how do we compare to similar organizations? And then his last question is, do you have a blue and orange bow tie?
Searching for a blue and orange bow tie. If any of you know of such vendors, please send them my way.
I have a feeling
Actually,
Sean can help you with that.
Somebody has already recommended Bow Ties of Vermont, so I am on the hunt. And so yet it's true. I only wear bow ties. That is very true. You know, the other part of the conversation, it's actually an incredibly important one, but I don't know that there's any one unified position insofar that most headquarter offices, for example, will utilize social media in some way, shape, or form. But social media can also be the kiss of death as it relates to relationships, as it relates to how we are perceived externally. You know, you don't have a lot of control. And so with social media comes enhanced responsibility. And with that enhanced responsibility comes a more complex environment of communications. It's definitely a part of our world. But for example, You will never, ever see me engage social media as it relates to adjudication matters. Never, ever, ever. What people want is a public hanging, and we don't do that for all kinds of reasons. Also, I very rarely see social media as an asset in regards to challenging conversations. It's an interesting place to go and get entertainment, to learn odds and ends. But I do think we have to think seriously in terms of what mode of communication and what environment is best for KDR as we move forward. Yes, I understand email is kind of considered old school. And at the same time, so is Instagram and whatnot. TikTok is out there, at least for now. And our men have a very interesting presence on TikTok. Yes, I try not to look too much, but I'm wary of social media. And I'm wary about it because I fear that at times the technology has outpaced our humanity. That is not unique to KDR. This is an issue that fraternity leaderships are having around the country. I think we need to think about what works best for KDR and to what end. To what end? Is that just to advertise, to promote, to help with recruitment? Or are we going to get into different kinds of conversations that are more serious? I'm not sure that that's the right platform. So at least for now, we're kind of looking at what we have. I think there's a collective understanding on the part of headquarters, on the part of the board, on the part of the foundation, that we must find a solution to update our website so that that website becomes user-friendly, brother-friendly, becomes an actual resource that we can utilize and the brothers can utilize differently as opposed to statically. But that too takes resources, but those conversations have started. I think we've got to turn to you, the membership, in terms of this new world of social media and what works for us, what doesn't work for us. I will tell you that at Sigma Lambda Beta, social media was just a kiss of death. Men were fighting on this thing and calling each other out, and board members had to act as both editors and then also had to kind of stop conversations at times. It just put people in really weird places. I will simply tell you, it did not bring out the best in the fraternity. And that's something that they're still trying to figure out. And of course, the political discourse of the day also reminds us where to engage, how to engage in this environment where we seem to have red, blue, and I just don't know the answer to that. That is the kind of answer that fits us yet. It's complicated.
Excellent. All right. So I never knew there was so many different choices in bow ties. So I have learned something today that is definitely useful. I mean, Bow Ties of Vermont has like 1,000 bow ties. Wow.
Gorgeous bow ties as well.
I was listening to the answer, but my ADD kicked in and I was looking for bow ties. And if everybody will look, our wonderful Sherry from the national office has put in the conversation a link to a royal blue and orange bow tie. So
awesome, Sherry.
Working for you already. All right. Question from Aaron Austinson. How do you plan to improve the opinion of the undergraduate members of our national office?
Great question. It's that piece of confidence and respect that I was talking about earlier. It's one that is on my mind each and every day. Believe it or not, I think about it in each and every conversation that I'm having with collegiate members. It actually frames the conversations that I'm having insofar that they cannot be fake. They cannot be superficial. And I recognize that I have to put myself out there and make myself potentially a little bit vulnerable in being earnest. As I've said to the collegiate members, nothing is off limits with me. And that's as it should be. But that also means that I'm willing to put myself out there, which I am. Because if they cannot trust me and do not believe in what I'm saying, there's no point. And I think our men not only deserve it, but I have to earn it. And I think the men whom I'm already in touch with know this because they hear it. It is a conversation at a time. It is one exec meeting at a time. If anything, I will be honest and say that I am noted for being a little bit long-winded. But it's only because I am so passionate and care so much about each and every conversation. And I want them to understand the totality of the information that I'm sharing with them and understand whence and where it is coming from. And so it's again a part of that mantra of earning it and walking the walk with our collegiate men. I get the suspicion, the men across the country have been completely uniform in their candor and thoughtfulness in terms of where we have at least historically stood. You know, I've kind of gotten used to, but I'm prepared to change the mantra of fuck nationals. Got to change. It's only going to change if I earn it. And that's my attitude and that's my approach. One man at a time, one exec at a time, one conversation at a time. Great question, tough question, but I'm consistent on that point. Got to do it.
And I will agree that it's conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it goes back to Eric's question earlier. Emails are great for mass communications. It's great for important pieces, but nothing beats a phone call or right now even a Zoom call. So
Agreed.
you can't. And I'll say it this way: I'm in the sales world. If I'm not on the phone doing things, I'm not successful. And that's the way I look at a lot of points in life. If you're not outbound doing things, you're not going to be successful.
It's also a presence question, okay? You know, telephone isn't good enough. Where the men are at today, telephone's not going to get it done. I'm not a fan advocate, or I'm not an advocate completely of Zoom, but it's a useful tool. Or the other devices and platforms that we use for engagement like Teams. But I also recognize, as I said to Scott, I've got to put myself in front of the men at the chapters on campus, having these conversations person to person, person to person. That's what we're working towards. But for now, I'm using the platforms where possible and recognize that more is yet to come. Hate the telephone, though, for important conversations. 'Tis true.
What else, guys? We're rolling on an hour, but I want to give everybody an opportunity to ask their questions. But I don't want to drag on just to beg for questions. So.
Yeah.
If you joined late, you might be wondering why you can't unmute yourself. So if you have a question, just drop it in the chat.
I'll give another minute or so just to make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, so Adam, oh, good, couple questions. Hey, Derek just showed up. Awesome. You may have been here for a while. I didn't see you, Derek, so I apologize for saying it that way. With the more personal aspect of in-person conversations, why do we only have a national convention every other year instead of every year? Let me answer that because Javier doesn't know the answer and I do. Unfortunately, the answer to that question comes down to money. You know, fiscally, it costs us a great deal to run a convention. And we are not financially in a position where we can run a convention every year without dramatically increasing the undergraduates' costs and fees. And I know that that is not something that we want to do. I want to try to limit your fees as much as possible. And I know y'all want your fees to be limited as much as possible as well. There's a two-way street. We're both going the same direction there. So that is the reason why we went to every other year a number of years ago. But that was the reasoning for it. And that's where we are. Like Javier said, if we can get, to the point where that endowment is grown, and there's more grants coming off of it, that's something that can be reevaluated. It's not a forever decision. But for now, it's the decision we had to make to be financially responsible. So Adam, I hope that answered your question. Derek Hudson, thank you, Adam. Derek Hudson asks, how will you give the young consuls a voice so they know they're heard?
And it's a great question, Derek, and greetings. A part of that has to be ensuring that I'm clearly understanding what their needs and priorities are. And in turn, I need to articulate that to the board so that it is a straight, unfiltered, really important to say, unfiltered conversation that can then take place. Now, the fact of the matter is we may come up with a new model down the road whereby the council has the opportunity to engage the board directly, or maybe we have another ad hoc committee that is comprised of, for example, Roth, Scott, and myself, to begin to have those conversations, be they monthly or every semester. But we've got to open up the gates of conversation. They need to be transparent, and I would argue they need to be unfiltered. Our men don't need filtering.
No, I'm definitely good with that as well. Cy, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Is there a way you can make the national office's finances more visible to us undergraduates? I feel like this would help some of us feel more comfortable paying our dues, knowing where our money is going and how it will end up benefiting our respective chapters in the short term as well as the long term. Let me take the lead on this one, and then I'll hand it to you, Javier.
Sounds good.
And this is public, but at every convention, we pass a budget to cover the next 2 years. And that is voted on by the undergraduates. The hard part is it's not always carried back to the chapters. So what we may need to do as a national office is make sure we're emailing that out, and Irving may correct me if I'm wrong, we may need to make sure we're emailing that out to the undergraduates, because there's there's a couple very important pieces to that budget. One, it shows you what our income is. Very important piece there, because we need everybody to pay their dues and their risk management fees so we can accomplish the expenses and the goals we have down below in the budget. The other piece that we always put together that we'll make sure and send out is there's a pie chart that shows how much of your dollar goes back to you as an undergraduate in mental health resources, educational program, and things like that. And if I remember correctly, it's 90% of your dues are being turned around and spent on the undergraduates. I will admit, I haven't looked at it in 8 months, but I need to make sure that we get it out to you, to the gentleman on the ground, so we can answer that question for you, Cy. Javier?
I think there's an additional piece, and it's a very good question. The bulk of our finances, when you think about it, go into two places, personnel and risk management. Risk management is huge. And that's what protects us, and that's what allows us to function in this environment. But I'm also thinking, Scott, along with you, that such a pie chart, a new kind of pie chart, that actually just breaks down how the funds are divvied up might be very useful, because it's that picture that I think that can be very overwhelming and very important. I mean, the amount that we pay to our insurance brokers is substantial, gentlemen, is substantial. And it goes up every year because those costs are pooled. And we have one of the greater companies and better companies in this respect. But nonetheless, risk management costs are not flatlined or going down, they're actually going up. So every time you hear about a national incident, you know, it's impacting us both directly and indirectly. Our own chapter behaviors, when we have investigations or we have challenges, believe it or not, actually impact our bottom line in terms of our insurance carrier. But I think we can do a good job and start to make that more transparent, so you, the membership, have a sense of it. I got to tell you, nobody's rolling in anything. We are very thoughtful, very careful with our expenditures, and unbelievably prudent, but there's no reason why you guys should know the puts and takes and how that puppy is designed. I think something that Scott and I will work on.
And I'm going to say this out loud. Bobby, I know you're on here because I can see your name. I'm going to charge you and Steve in our next finance committee meeting. We're going to start working on that pie chart to get it back out.
Sounds good.
So that way it's not just me working on that, because those two guys are great at putting those numbers together. All right. Jacob Ryan from Chi Beta asks, how do you plan to be involved with the undergraduates? Being an alumni status from a chapter that was shut down, Irving, John, and Abe do magnificent jobs talking and working with undergraduates. However, I feel during my time being consul, I never heard anything from anyone higher above Irving, John, and Abe on what needed to be corrected and how to go about correcting it. And I felt I was blindsided. So we can talk more about the individual specifics of that later, Jacob, but Javier, just the generality of how you're going to be more involved as well, please.
I'm actually having to be very careful with Irving, John, and Abe in terms of getting too involved with chapter conversations. We are working in a fundamentally different model, one that's more synergistic, one that is more resource dependent. In other words, each of us brings certain gifts and attributes to the table. We want to bring those attributes to you, the chapters. And so I think as you will see moving forward, or the collegiates will see moving forward, yes, they will still be working with their wonderful colleagues from HQ, but I get to be a part of that conversation in life too. Not to impede, but to be a piece of value added and be helpful in a part of that toolkit. Again, we're looking at how we serve our chapters very, very differently. It literally is a different operational paradigm. I want us at the end of the day to be, as I said earlier, thought of as another division within a student development or student services operation as a parallel, and to be as significant and important in our collegiates' lives as the Dean of Students office. We're not there. Those conversations have started. The way we're operating has already started in terms of this new synergistic conversation. And it's important for you to know that it's not a conversation from on high. I'm not dictating to anybody. We're approaching each and every chapter unique unto itself, and looking at ourselves in terms of what kind of attributes, what kind of gifts can we bring to the table that will be of benefit to the chapter based on what we're hearing from the chapter. So the entire process of engagement is now moving forward fundamentally different. And that in turn will create open lines of communication within all levels of our organization. I am not going to be just somebody pointing, actively engaged, and I already am daily.
And I will say, as far as, and I've said this before, but everybody getting out and doing things requires funds. We have to make sure that those funds are coming in from the undergraduates, and we're going to make sure that that is as transparent as we can be.
Scott, can I add one additional piece that we haven't touched on, but it is really important? Gentlemen, we collectively have got to work together to eliminate debt. I just need to say it. We're carrying way too much debt for maybe every right reason, but then we're running around trying to chase people down to pay their payment plans, and then they don't, and this thing is mushrooming. We have substantial debt. We ought not have the level of debt that we're carrying at present. And so I just want to make that, it is a plea. If all of a sudden we were able to eliminate our debt tomorrow, we'd have a different operation the following day. That is not an overstatement. That's real time. So again, understand that I understand when we have to create payment plans and whatnot, I get it, we get it. The problem then happens when men walk away from that responsibility, leaving everybody else in the lurch. We can't operate that way. We shouldn't be operating that way. And the brotherhood demands better.
Very good. Jacob, I'm going to let Irving take care of that question later. Hey, he's got himself back in good shape. He's got himself healthy. So we're going to be all right with that. Okay, so we're at an hour 15. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I'm going to let Xavier say some closing comments, but I just want to say thank you all very much for your time. You're not on this call if you're not committed to KDR, and that is tremendously appreciated. Please know that Xavier, from myself and the board, please know that Xavier, the staff, the board, and the foundation trustees are all committed to Kappa Delta Rho, the undergraduates and the alumni. We're committed to making sure we're going the right direction and taking the right steps to continue to move our fraternity forward. So, Xavier, I'll hand it back over to you.
Again, thank you, gentlemen, for just an extraordinary welcome to KDR. I recognize the work is going to be hard, but it is worth it each and every day. And I remind you all that I'm guided by the principles that undergird and underlie this organization. Allow there to be no miscommunication on that point. It is a privilege to work with all of you in partnership with the men of Kappa Delta Rho. But it is a privilege that I will work hard to develop and earn each and every day. I thank you for the opportunity, and I thank you for the warm welcome to the community. Thank you.
Gentlemen, Irving will shut this down, but thank you very much. Once again, thank you for your time, and know that new things for KDR are coming. We're always going to be taking input, and we appreciate it. Everybody have a great evening and have a safe weekend. Wait, Irving looks like he has something.
Yeah.
Go, Irving.
I just wanted to remind you all about the next two Kimball Talks. One's
Yes.
going to be August and September. Derek Hudson's actually on the call, but he's coming next month to talk about his nonprofit in Charleston, West Virginia. I have had the pleasure of attending his nonprofit, and it is an incredible resource to the community. And then the following month, Evan Flatt from Christopher Newport will be talking about his experience working on the social media team at NASA. So a quick plug, if you know any other alumni that want to come talk about their KDR experience in their career, I'm going to drop my email in the chat for everyone if you have any suggestions. Other than that, you're good to go. If you don't feel comfortable asking questions out loud, you can stay on. Xavier and I will hang around for a few minutes.
Happy to.
Yes. Me too. I mean, I've heard Derek, but I want to hear him, but I'm definitely interested in hearing Evan talk about NASA. So, and Derek's got he's doing some great things with nonprofits. So I'm excited for those. Because I'm on not only this board, I'm on another nonprofit locally as well. So I'm excited to see things that they're doing.
Ditto that.
Yes.